The most important element to making great barbecue at home is not the dry rub, some secret barbecue sauce, or a specific kind of wood smoke. Those things make barbecue barbecue, but every region has different opinions on what is best. The one thing that all great barbecue has in common though, and the first step you have to understand and execute, is the collagen to gelatin transformation. Today, we're going to break down these 4 components and show how they are implemented in barbecue. I prepared barbecue pork ribs, beef brisket, a whole chicken, and even a head of cauliflower to showcase how these elements can change based on the effect that you were going for. Before we dive in, today's special barbecue episode is brought to you by the folks at Traeger. Since I'm in an apartment and don't even have a balcony, Traeger was happy to send out the Ironwood 885 pellet grill to my brother and his fiancee's new house in Colorado, where I filmed this episode. Basically, Traeger gave me the ability to give them the best housewarming and wedding present ever, so thanks Traeger. Be sure to check out TraegerGrills.com to learn more and subscribe to Traeger's YouTube channel for more great video recipes. But let's break it down, y'all, starting with the collagen to gelatin transformation. First, a quick primer on collagen. So from the science of great barbecuing and grilling, collagen is a type of connective tissue that is invisibly scattered throughout the muscle, often surrounding fibers and sheath. And basically, it's just what keeps the meat together when it's raw. However, as we cook it and it reaches a certain temperature, that collagen liquefies and no longer keeps that tight hold on the muscle fibers. I mean, just look at this cooked brisket. I can easily pull it apart with my hands. So why is this transformation so important? Well, as you can guess, it's primarily a texture thing, because when that collagen melts, it actually forms gelatin, which makes the meat tender and succulent. How? Well, again, the muscles are no longer held intact, which means it pulls apart, making it easier to chew. And secondly, according to the Thermoblog, gelatin is actually able to absorb 10 times its weight in water. So water that is being released during cooking and would normally make the meat dry is actually absorbed into the gelatin, making the meat stay moist. So those luxurious beef brisket slices that just melt in your mouth, the pork ribs that bite clean off the bone, or tender chicken thighs are all a product of this transformation. And just take a look at this photo from the science of great barbecuing and grilling. Now, personally, I'd rather have a properly cooked rib in the oven with just plain salt as the seasoning, rather than an undercooked and tough rib with the best barbecue rub and sauce that was smoked. If that collagen to gelatin transformation hasn't happened, it ruins the experience in my opinion. I've got great news though. While this may sound complex, this is actually supremely easy to achieve. Collagen breakdown is a product of temperature and time. That's right, for anyone starting out, all this means is you need a quality thermometer. And I like the latter half of this quote from Meathead regarding thermometers in barbecue. Quote, "As with everything in barbecue, getting blue smoke is all about temperature control. Cooks who say they don't need thermometers are either seasoned old-timers who learned at the foot of a master's and have been doing it for years, or they're macho knuckle-draggers." End quote. Seriously, if you invest in a quality thermometer and understand temperature control, you'll be able to make great barbecue every single time. You see, collagen starts to melt at 160 degrees Fahrenheit and all the way up to 205 degrees Fahrenheit. The important part is that the meat needs to spend enough time in that melting range for the collagen to liquefy, which is why barbecue methods are typically done low and slow in ranges such as 200 degrees Fahrenheit to 275 degrees Fahrenheit. And what this means for the home cook is you just need to monitor your meat with a thermometer. It's really that easy. So now that we have the theory down, let's take a look at the various cuts that I did. So different cuts of meats have different amounts of collagen. For example, pork tenderloin, chicken, and turkey have less collagen than tougher cuts like pork ribs, shoulder, or beef brisket, so ensuring enough time occurs in the liquefy zone for those cuts is much more important. And everyone has a different method for smoking ribs or brisket. This is just what I happen to do on a particular day, just keeping that collagen to gelatin transformation in mind, but there are countless reasons why you may want to switch up your methods. For my brisket, to be short here, the smoker was set at 225 degrees Fahrenheit and placed on at 5 a.m. It was then smoked naked until it hit about 155 degrees Fahrenheit when the stall happened, before I brought it out, wrapped it, and tossed it back in the smoker to move past the stall all the way up to 203 degrees Fahrenheit, where it was pulled and placed to rest in a cooler for another hour before slicing and enjoying. And as you can see, that brisket spent plenty of time in that collagen melting zone to ensure that it was nice and tender and juicy. Now, a quick note on the stall. So this is a common thing that happens in smoking where the meat steadily rises and then the temp absolutely stalls for hours without budging. And then you kind of start to worry if you're going to actually have dinner that night. As Meathead notes, the stall happens because of the moisture of the meat releasing to the surface where evaporative cooling occurs. Now, if time does permit, you can just let the meat go in the smoker and it will eventually move past, but what I did and many people, including top competitive barbecue teams do, is use the Texas crutch. And the Texas crutch is as simple as wrapping the meat tightly in foil or butcher paper, and essentially we're creating a braising environment like a closed pot to move past that stall. Now, potential cons of this method are a little bit less smoke development and then the bark will moisten up, but you can always let it dry out at the end. And if you want some further reading about brisket specifically, check out this ThermoWorks post on smoked brisket where they tried 3 different methods for smoking their brisket. That being said, I really just wanted to focus on the basics here, and once you understand this concept, you can nail succulent and juicy barbecue every single time. And I've got to say, tender and juicy brisket is my personal all-time favorite smoked meat. But now, let's talk ribs. Ribs also have a significant amount of collagen, however, they are a much thinner cut than brisket, so it takes less time. For my ribs, I essentially used the 3-2-1 method, where the smoker was set at 225 degrees Fahrenheit, and then the ribs were placed in the smoker unwrapped until they hit around 160, then I wrapped them, placed them back in the smoker until they hit around 200 degrees Fahrenheit, before unwrapping and slathering them with sauce, and then finishing them on a slightly higher heat to sear that sauce at the end for 30 minutes. Now, ribs can be a little tricky to take the temperature of. You just want to make sure you are in the thick part of the meat for an accurate reading. If the bones come clean out, that's usually a good sign. And again, understanding the concept is key. If you want them literally falling off, give the ribs more time in that heat zone. If you want them with a firmer bite, do a little less time. Chicken, on the other hand, has much less collagen compared to ribs and brisket, like almost none, and I broke the chicken down into pieces and again started the smoker at 225. The breast was smoked until it reached about 145 degrees Fahrenheit and the thighs until they reached 170 before I pulled them off and wrapped and stored in a cooler. Then right before serving, I seared them at 400 degrees Fahrenheit to crisp the skin a bit. Since really only the thighs and wings have collagen and connective tissue, those are the parts that you want to hit above 160. Lastly, my cauliflower was a last minute addition that I thought would be an interesting experiment for the other sections of this video, but obviously it has no collagen as it's a vegetable, so this was just smoked until tender in the inside. In conclusion, there are countless ways to smoke and cook barbecues at different temperatures and different times, and people can be opinionated about what is best. But whichever method you are choosing, you have to understand that collagen to gelatin transformation to get the desired texture that you want. Just remember, identify the temperature target, make sure it spends enough time at temperature, because once you have this mastered, this is where things get fun and where barbecue actually turns into barbecue, the seasonings. So while the collagen to gelatin transformation is essentially a prerequisite to good barbecue, that can be done in an oven or in your crock pot. What makes barbecue barbecue is the smoke, the dry rubs, and the barbecue sauces, so let's break them down. Smoke is quite literally just seasoning. Like ground pepper or chili powder, smoke has a distinctive taste, and how it works is really simple. As smoke moves over the food, those small smoke particles stick to the exterior. Just take a look at the before and after of this cauliflower. You can see the smoke particles that have stuck to it. And here's a basic experiment shown in the Science of Great Barbecuing and Grilling. They placed 2 cans in a smoker for 30 minutes, and clearly the one filled with ice water attracted a lot more smoke, and this is due to 2 factors. First, cool surfaces attract smoke due to thermophoresis, and second, smoke sticks better to wet surfaces, so when the condensation happened, that smoke stuck. And knowing this is why people do things like start with cold meat from the fridge right to the smoker, use a water pan in the cooker to maintain high humidity, maintain low temps to minimize drying on the surface of the meat, they spritz their meat with water, vinegar, or apple juice, or add sauces or glazes to various meat cuts, because all of these techniques help capture the smoke particles. Now, it is interesting to note that smoke particles are almost entirely on the surface of the food, as it cannot penetrate more than 1/8 of an inch into little cuts in the meat. That coveted smoke ring you see in brisket or ribs is actually not due to smoke particles, but happens because invisible gases nitric oxide and carbon monoxide lock in the color of myoglobin in the meat, meaning it maintains that reddish pink color that it is when it's raw. And just using those techniques and understanding how smoke works from earlier is a great way to achieve that smoke ring every barbecue enthusiast loves to see. So the basic takeaway is smoke particles stick best to cold and wet surfaces, but we also have to understand what type of smoke is best, and as Meathead points out in his book, there are three main ones. You have pale blue, pure white, and dark smoke, and the differences are really particle size and flavor. So pale blue smoke has the smallest particle size, which sticks better and thus tastes better, and this is what you are looking for. Pure white is larger and is the smoke that happens when the fire is first started, and then dark smoke happens when the fire doesn't have any oxygen, and it can make the food taste bitter and sooty, so should be completely avoided. But now that we understand how smoke works, let's quickly talk smoker and wood types. In general, the four fuel sources for smokers are wood, charcoal, gas, and electric, and each provide different flavors. Now, most of these fuel sources use a different wood to provide the smoke. For example, placing apple wood over wood logs, or placing wood chunks over charcoal, or wood chip packets for a gas grill. Now, in general, the benefits of gas and electric are going to be the temperature control, convenience, and versatility, while with wood and charcoal, they give you a more interesting smoky flavor, but it can be a bit hard to maintain those temps, especially for longer cooks, or you could easily burn something. Sometimes charcoal gets really hot. Now, the Traeger pellet grill is what I'm using today, and pellet grills in general are pretty interesting because you get the robust smoky flavor since you are using wood as the heat source. It's just in the form of pellets, but you still get all of the temperature control, convenience, and versatility of gas and electric. It's kind of like the best of both worlds. For example, the Ironwood 885 can heat from 165 Fahrenheit up to 500 Fahrenheit, so you can smoke low and slow and then at the last minute heat it up for a nice sear, like if you wanted to do a reverse seared steak. It has an app that can monitor the heat of the inside of the smoker and the attached meat thermometer. It also gives you a notification when you're running low on pellets, which is kind of ridiculous. And the pellets themselves are incredible at creating that concentrated source of pale blue smoke that is coveted. And these grills just literally make it so easy to get great tasting barbecue. That being said, all those features generally make pellet grills one of the more expensive options on the market, but whatever you get for your backyard, remember to focus on the fundamentals that we've discussed today, and you'll be churning out great barbecue. Now, as far as specific types of wood, there are countless options from apple to hickory to mesquite, and many people often wonder which one is best. And to answer this question, I like this quote. The quality of the meat, the spice rub, the sauce, and the temperature affect the final taste profile far more than the name on a bag of wood. Now, that being said, here is a pellet chart that Traeger uses for some classic wood pairings, and the science of great barbecuing and grilling breaks woods into generally mild and strong woods, which I have denoted on the chart. The case in point though is get your temperature, your meat, your dry rub, and sauce in order before getting overly analytical about your wood choice. Speaking of, let's talk rubs and sauces. At the end of the day, dry rubs and barbecue sauces are really down to preference, and each region in the United States has opinions on what is best. For example, I may think Carolina Gold is the best sauce for pork ribs, or a pepper-heavy dry rub is best on brisket, but you may completely disagree. So I'm not here to tell you which is best, I'm just here to break it down. In general, dry rubs and barbecue sauces externally season the meat, just like smoke, though there is a bit of technique going on here as well. Before we get to the rubs, let me first say that if you have the time, you should wet or dry brine your meat. I've touched on this in several other videos, so I'll be short here. Brines internally season the meat and help in moisture retention, and I salted each of the cuts that I used here the day before cooking and then left them in the fridge overnight, but here's a quick chart showing how long you'll typically need depending on the thickness of the food. Also, if the meat is brined, make sure the rub you make or use does not have salt added, or else that meat is going to be heavily oversalted. Okay, so spices and rubs, just like smoke, do not penetrate more than 1/8 of an inch into the meat, so again, there's no real reason to put them on the night before, and the brisket was actually the only cut of meat I decided to make a rub for, which for this one was 25 grams of ground black pepper, 15 grams of sugar, 7 grams of onion powder, 2 grams of ground mustard, 3 grams of garlic powder, and 2 grams of chipotle powder that was just mixed together. To apply a rub, I splashed a little bit of water on the exterior of the brisket, which is just going to help that rub stick on there since the skin is dried out a bit in the fridge overnight. Now, in other preparations, you may see people use mustard, vinegar, or oil, and all of these help that rub stick to the exterior. And you just sprinkle the rub from high up above over top, ensuring that you get even coverage, and then pop your piece of meat into the grill, and away you go. That's all there is to it. Through smoking, the exterior of the brisket is going to darken and form that beautiful bark that is honestly my favorite part of the whole brisket. For my preference, I tend to use a rub if I'm not going to slather a sauce on to cook. Speaking of, what about sauces? So, in general, there are two ways to use barbecue sauces. You can use it during cooking or as a table sauce. For using during cooking, such as a mop sauce, a thick sauce, or a glaze, it can do a couple of things. That sauce can be a wet surface that attracts smoke. If the sauce has sugar, it can caramelize from the heat, and the sauce flavor deepens as it cooks. On this day, I made 3 barbecue sauces. First, an Alabama white barbecue sauce that is mayo based, and this one was strictly a table sauce for the chicken to use after it had been cooked, and I highly recommend you give this one a go.
Oh.
Second was a Carolina Gold barbecue sauce, a mustard based sauce that is my personal favorite for pork ribs or pulled pork. And this sauce was slathered on the ribs for the last 30 minutes of cooking to help it kind of caramelize and become a slightly sticky coating. And it also becomes infused with the ribs themselves instead of just squirting some on at the table. The third sauce was a classic Kansas City style barbecue sauce, probably the one that most of us synonymize with barbecue sauce you get at the store. And this one was used as a coating for the cauliflower to cook on. And then secondly, I also just kept this as a general table sauce for some brisket. Like I was saying, I do like my brisket plain with the rub, but it is good to have on hand if you're making some sandwiches or leftover brisket tacos. Whatever you end up doing for your barbecue gathering, I think it's fun to give the guest options on which sauces they can choose and experiment with, so have some fun. Alright everyone, so hopefully this video kind of demystified barbecue or made it much more approachable as a beginner's guide for all the home cooks out there. I think a lot of times with smoking, it can get a little bit confusing or seem harder than it actually is because, you know, people are always trying to say this method for smoking brisket or ribs is way better than that one, or they're trying to say you need some special rub or sauce. And I really wanted to strip all of that down in this video so, you know, we can understand why people are maybe spritzing their brisket or adding mustard to ribs before sprinkling a rub over the top. So hopefully that video did that, and this can be kind of the start of your barbecue journey, and then you'll be able to make and adjust those variables exactly how you want to make your perfect barbecue. And another huge thank you to Traeger for sponsoring this video. Having them send that grill out to my brother and his fiance was awesome. My parents also flew out for the weekend. And I also got to see some friends. We just had like a nice dinner. I mean, the grills are sick. I'll definitely be getting one as soon as I get out of the apartment life and actually have some outdoor space. So hopefully you guys have enjoyed the video. Be sure to check out their website, their YouTube channel, all that good stuff. But that's gonna wrap it up for me in this one. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace, y'all.